Hello and welcome to your Ageless Musical Brain podcast, where we take you on a journey on how to intentionally use the power of music to help promote your own brain health long term. Today's focus, keeping music very much alive in the hearts of every age. My very special guest today and subject matter expert in music education is a professional music instructor at Musical Pathways in Pennsylvania, an adjudicator at U.S. bands, trumpeter at Taps for Veterans, the Verdi Band, the Penview Brass Ensemble, playing at events and different organizations. He's performed with the famous Latin and jazz trumpeter band leader, Charlie Sepulveda. He's also a winner of jazz scholarships who wants to further his career as a music curator and music therapist. His mission is to create change through life's musical pathways. My very special guest today is Paul Feldman. Welcome to the show, Paul. Nice to have you.
It's great to be here, Lucy.
Creating change through life's musical pathways. Tell us how that happens.
Well, I'm actually going to start with a quote from the show Star Wars: The Clone Wars that came out in the 2000s. There's a character by the name of Ahsoka Tano who is a Jedi and works with a series of young students in an academy and mentions the idea that the greatest change comes from within. And it really is true. Because when we think about how we develop our interests and we develop our experiences, it really comes from just building our sense of self and identity. But of course, that can only flourish so much if you stay within a bubble. And I felt that music has very much been a great vehicle for, if not popping that bubble fully, then expanding it so that way your sense of self not only remains within, but that it translates to other people, and it can very much be a vehicle for making people listen and making people want to learn new things and want to use their skills and talents in order to be the best person they can and to make the world the best place that it can be. And I believe that music can be one of, not the only one, but one of the many great seeds that you can plant in order for that garden to grow. I think looking at the generations that come before you is really one of those ways in which you build that sense of self. And there's lots of stories, there's lots of wisdom and history that you can glean from them. And through performing taps in particular, just a series of 23 notes, all played on one valve combination on the trumpet. It's a series of notes that really resonates with those individuals and really anyone of any age group. It reminds people to stop and take notice that those that made an impact in our lives, those that served our country, or even those that just performed everyday miracles, have a legacy that they've imparted. And doing what I can and being a part of the organizations that do what they can to honor their legacy, I think is something really special, because we're really continuing to preserve history. There's so many different types of music that those in retirement homes and in veterans gatherings really enjoy, even just outside of taps. Sousa marches via the American Federation of Musicians, performing in brass ensembles like the Penview Brass Ensemble that I've played in, especially during the holiday time, is just that little bit of joy that people in that age bracket can really glean, and just remind everyone that traditions are things to hold true to, even when individuals in that situation are going through a tough time, even if they're in a point in which they're healing. It's just a really special way to give back. And as much as possible, I actually try to take notice when I can during a performance and observe how the audience members are responding to the music. So if we're playing a tango, a piece of music that has like a tango or a dance feel to it, seeing them move about and nod their heads is something very powerful and intriguing. And looking at those residents, for example, the Sisters of Immaculata, when we've performed for them, they get a great smile on their face when they hear hymns and dedications to God that are very much a reminder of their practice. So there's just so much to say, and there's just so much history that we can continue to glean. Even as our elderly population and our veterans become more current in time, I do believe that will continue to be the case as long as there are people that remember.
Continue nurturing that idea, promoting that idea of involving, the youth in music, because it's pretty sad. What's happening right now is that a lot of the younger generations, like the Alpha and the Gen Z, which is who you teach, are not necessarily being promoted as they should with their talent. What do you think about that?
Oh, I would fully agree with that. I do wish I had some opportunities even outside of my school to perform with a collective of other trumpeters, or even just musicians in general, really building an opportunity to perform outside of school. How many things can our children truly be a part of? I don't know if it's enough for Jimmy to be a part of just school. He needs to be in soccer. He needs to be in chess club and student council, and maybe do some violin lessons. Because it just gets to the point where, like any rubber band, sure it can stretch, but at some point it can only stretch so much, and naturally something's going to give. The frustrating thing comes about when someone truly has that talent for music, and it's being split across such a wide nexus and medium of so many different things. And it really is a beautiful thing to be involved and be active in a lot of ways. But when it gets to the point where clearly they're not able to be as immersed in an experience as they could because of what they're doing, eventually there is a stopping point, and it just creates the need for a change anyways. But that can also be kind of humbling in a way, because then they begin, especially as those children start to go from the egocentric mindset to the more broader mindset, the more concrete mindset, and abstract, they start to realize that there are things that go beyond themselves, and that there's only so much that they can stay in their bubble, really. So then there's the side of it of just not having the opportunity, the opposite. When we were in the midst of the lockdown during COVID-19, that only further spurred a question of how much should we really be limiting ourselves to. And there were some people that unfortunately did not run with it that much and very much stayed on their devices. And then there were others that did try to connect virtually and did try to find ways to be resourceful and still find these opportunities. It is very fortunate that instruction and even some private music instruction programs expanded in that time, and now our breadth of options has increased to supplement it. But the fact is, our devices, the technology that we use, is only going to continue to compete with their lives, and just the same thing with the amount of necessary involvement.
How many of those children approximately do you see that actually join you because of the influence from their parents?
Building rapport is so important, because without that rapport, without that aspect of humanity, there really isn't anything to latch onto, or not in the same way. And yeah, I mean, some students, even as young as second grade, will come to me with a very keen sense of what they want to learn and bounds of ambition and ideas of what they want to learn. And it requires a little bit of redirection. There certainly can be some students where it can be difficult to keep their attention for more than 5 seconds. But the thing is, I've only heard this more and more over time. In education, you want to meet your students where they are. And that's exactly what I do. And over time, they rise to the occasion. Over time, their identity starts to flourish. And for those students that take even more time than usual, the thing is just to focus on what they're interested in. I think it's just so important to even today, to continue to challenge myself to think of a question of the day, to, as much as possible, go beyond, well, how was your week? How's school going? Even if I am guilty of asking those questions quite a bit. But sometimes that's all they need. And sometimes they just need to know that, hey, this is what I can expect every time, anytime. And as long as I'm harbored and protected by this pocket of structure and this sense of predictability, then everything's going to be fine. I still know I'm in a safe place. I'm a place where I can make mistakes, and that can be very much part of how I grow. Some of those students are very apprehensive to that change and want to stay in their box. And while it is important to push them, it is also important to remind them that their comfort zone is always a go-to. And that could be doing simple things like sliding on the instrument. It could be matching a pattern where I play da 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 and they play da 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 in exactly the same way. But anyways, there's so many different ways to go about instructing our future, our really future citizens.
Yeah, it creates value to their lives and raises morale, right? Gives them poise, allows them to focus, allows them to stay in focus is what I love, especially with children, because it is hard to get them to focus, but once they play a musical instrument, that's actually what's happening, and it helps them in school as well.
If I may, I should also mention the value of choice, because at first, when I did my first couple years of private music instruction, even though I can consider myself to be very much by the books, and yeah, my students, especially at Collegium, hi there, know I can be that way. I was even more that way earlier on, and I would pretty much just go with whatever the directions were. That's what we would do. Now, did I have my own style? Sure. But what was missing? That sense of choice. Started injecting more opportunity for choice. For one, students could earn a prize if they get a certain amount of what I call double checks, which is their way of showing that not only have they successfully played that piece of music, but they've surprised myself and possibly themselves in some ways. And, this gives them the opportunity to pick the incentive. Not only that, but they also get, at some point, they get to pick a piece of music that they want to play. And I typically like to alternate between giving them 3 classical or jazz pieces to play, and then you get to choose one. Doing 3 more, and then you get to choose. And even when my recitals come about, I try to give them an opportunity to pick, if it's during the winter, a winter holiday song or winter theme piece to pick, or just anything that they like. That can involve playing a duet. It could involve playing with a friend, or perhaps even choosing a piece that others wanted to play, the other students wanted to play, and just mixing them all together. It's my student teaching advisor about 9 years ago said, really, you can think of your students as like guinea pigs. They are yours to test out, and the only way that you learn is how they respond. And the opposite is most certainly true. It's like living through chemistry. And, we see so much that happens in front of our eyes. And the only way it's going to be as organic as possible is where that harbor of structure and that convenience and privilege of choice are both in tow, and are both a part of the equation.
And you've won jazz scholarships.
It's called the Michael Falcone Jazz Scholarship, and it was created by his brother, who both of them were musicians, and Michael was a tenor saxophonist and educator, oddly enough, who really preached the value of jazz and bringing creativity through improvisation, through building your own voice as a soloist, but also finding a way to blend in harmony and create melodies that really connect with people. And in 2014, as the continue carries on every year, the at-time head of jazz department, Dr. Mark Jacoby, had looked for a series of individuals, not just myself, but a few individuals that really embody his mission of bringing jazz and bringing the value of jazz on a huge scale, through dedication, through service, really through all the different values that music teaches. And whenever I think of the role that jazz plays, I think of our current steward and preserver of jazz, Wynn Marsalis, who is very vocal about jazz being a representation of democracy incarnate. You've got the rhythm section that keeps time and very much keeps the heart and soul, the blood pumping. You've got the bass that gives the grounded foundation of harmony, of notes that you play in order to know how to build off of that foundation. You've got the piano and guitar that strings those notes all together and creates the color that we have in our world, because jazz is just one of those many types of genres that really imbues color. It's very powerful. So yes, I was one of 4 recipients to receive that scholarship, and of course the benefit being that it pays back my service that I do, but it's still my hope to keep that exchange a circular one, a cyclical one, in which my efforts continue to push the bar for creativity, and in which recognition and innovation comes forth. And that's really what that scholarship was about.
I want to thank you so much for all of this time.
Thanks again for having me.
All right. Take care. Bye bye.
Bye now.